And here he is, a Jack Leiter pitching prospect in the Texas Rangers organization, number 2 overall pick in this past MLB draft. Jack, thank you for joining me from spring training out there in Arizona.
Thank you for having me.
So how has it been, man? I mean, last time I saw you, you were getting ready. We didn't know when spring training was going to happen. We didn't know what was going to be going on. And blink of an eye, now all of a sudden the lockout, everything's taken care of, and you're pitching against big league hitters. How has that whirlwind been for you? And just, I guess, give me a little bit of a lowdown of what spring training has been like for you, this first little pro experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's been awesome. Obviously, this being my first spring training, I didn't really know what a normal spring training with big leaguers was. So coming in, I came in early, about a month before the minor league spring training started, early January. And it was all just minor league guys, mostly pitchers. And we would just come in, get our work in, and it was pretty quick days. So that was really nice. And then once spring training started, it got a little more hectic, but it's been pretty awesome. And now I think I speak for everyone when I say that we're excited to get going.
Yeah, and you're waiting to kind of find out where exactly you'll start, whether it's high A or double A, but I'm sure you're just, like you said, eager to get started. How have you been feeling on the mound in terms of getting ready? Because something I keep hearing from pitchers at all different levels, whether it's big league guys, minor league guys, it's a little bit different, even though you haven't had the spring training experience of just getting acclimated and getting ready to go and get stretched out. How do you think you're going to approach that once you get into your first minor league stint in terms of how deep you can go into your first few starts?
Yeah, I mean, body wise, it's feeling really good so far. And obviously pro ball, it's different than college. College, you kind of ramp up quick, and by the third week, you're kind of full go, ready to go deep into games. And hopefully, as someone who really enjoyed going deep into games in college, hopefully that we can get to that point, as soon as possible, whatever's a smooth transition. But as of now, I threw 3 innings last week, and then hoping to go 4 this week, and maybe 4 or 5 opening weekend, and then kind of work your way up from there.
And I want to talk at the end a little bit about, you talk about stretching out that no-hitter at Vanderbilt, just because I want to get a little bit into the head of a pitcher as you start to go down the line there. And you're a guy that's very lower half driven, so I want to hear a little bit about how you pitch through fatigue and all of those things. But going back to what you're doing right now, you got your first experience with the Rangers jersey across your chest. Can you talk about balancing that with working on what you want to work on as if you're in a bullpen, right? And trying to get your stuff ready. How did you balance that adrenaline with also just trying to get yourself ready to go for the season?
Yeah, I mean, I've always heard about it. Obviously, my dad played, and talking to people who also pitched, there's this weird kind of limbo in spring training of, you want to compete, you want to get guys out and get results, but at the same time, you need to work on some stuff. So I think that kind of, comes first, which is a weird transition again from college, because college, it's always compete mode. And here, a lot of it's based on development. So, you reach your certain goals. You have your small daily goals. I want to throw this many changeups. I want my slider to do this, and you work on that while working and obviously competing and hoping to get results.
So let's talk about the stuff. I mean, everybody knows that you've got great stuff, and the fastball's been up to 99. The slider, when you located it so far, you've had some crazy bad swings that I've seen some hitters take at that slider. What's been your focus in terms of your arsenal and what you've been trying to develop or just continue to get a feel for as you get ready for the year?
Yeah, that's most of it, is getting a feel for everything. Every season since I started pitching, in high school, the beginning of the seasons is just getting comfortable in your body, feeling in sync again, figuring out what the spin feels like out of your hand for breaking balls, what's too much, what's too little, not getting too quick and rotational. There's just some certain things that kind of fall into place as the season gets going, but you obviously try to speed that process up and get there before the season starts. So it's sort of just working through all those things. But, there's specific things in terms of shape and metrics, but mostly the focus for me has always been change up, and that's continued to get more and more comfortable. just a better feel for that and a more consistent shape with it. And then, the slider at Vanderbilt, it was a little bit inconsistent, gave up a few home runs on that when it kind of just spun and hung up over the middle of the plate. So I'm trying to just eliminate those hanging sliders with, again, a more consistent feel and a more consistent shape.
Getting a little deeper into the mechanical side of things, what's the difference between some of the spinners versus the ones that you really are able to snap and get that desired break?
A lot of it's how it comes out of your hand. Some of it might have to do with grip. I'm throwing with a different grip than I did at Vanderbilt. I'm kind of always tinkering with grips. Where's my thumb go? Should I go further up on the seam? Should I choke it, hold it loose? So that's something that's kind of always evolving, but you kind of just get to a point where it comes off your fingers more consistently and your arm kind of comes through with the more consistent path, similar to your fastball. And that's, the best you can do at creating the most consistent slider you can get. But obviously, the hangers are going to happen. It happens to the best.
And going into you talk about being able to get stretched out a little bit. Ultimately, the goal is to be able to do that again and continue to go deeper into ball games. Though I'm sure, as you see with so many different top pitching prospects, teams like to be very careful with the way that you eat those innings early on in your career. How do you balance that in terms of you want to get better at being able to give different looks to hitters and, first time around, second time around, third time around. But sometimes for pitchers early in the development process, they don't really get a chance to do that. You have a deep arsenal. Is that something that you're just going to maybe play around with a little bit more first time through the order? Are you going to stick to what works? Or are there any kind of plans you have going into those first few starts of your professional career to work on those things?
I would say it's similar to what it always is, because once you get out of spring training, that whole development idea, obviously it's still present from the front office down, but from your own focus, it kind of goes strictly into compete mode, trying to win baseball games. And obviously, again, as the broader focus, teams aren't as worried if their high A team is winning on whatever it might be, a Monday night, but that starting pitcher, I can promise you he wants to win the game. So that kind of becomes the main focus, and then the other stuff kind of falls into place.
And so far in your spring training experience, being with the big league guys, has there been anybody that you've kind of just gravitated towards, or that you've had a really cool moment? I mean, obviously you have your built-in father who had a pretty decent big league career himself, and is as wise as they get on the baseball side. And I know he has really taught you a lot through the years, but sometimes it's different when it's somebody else, right? Like, have you had anybody that you've interacted with so far in spring training that has been beneficial to you, or just a moment where it's like, oh, wow, like it's that guy right there?
Yeah, it's just been really cool to have those guys around. Like I said, the first part of spring training this year, they weren't around. So that's kind of what I became used to. And then now those guys are walking around. We're a little bit separated in terms of locker rooms and the fields that we're using, but getting to be around some of those guys. I know some of the older guys that they've recently brought on, Matt Moore and then Martin Perez, they talked to some of the younger pitchers one day, and we kind of just listened, and they obviously have a ton of wisdom and knowledge, especially in pitching, but kind of just in the whole professional baseball lifestyle as a whole. And then, guys like Dane Dunning, and the list kind of goes on. Everybody's been super nice.
And going back now to Vanderbilt, something that's always stood out to me with you is how well you use your entire body with your mechanics, and how you're able to go deep into starts and be able to sustain that velo. And I know that's something that you've always kind of prided yourself on, and making sure you have that all of your mechanics kind of working well and repeating them as every pitcher tries to focus on. Specifically in that no hitter, I wanted to kind of get inside of your head. I went back and watched some of that. And down the stretch, just at what point, one, did you realize, hey, I'm throwing a no-hitter against a ranked team? I know you're focused on winning the ball game. I know you're going to say that. But at what point did you realize that? And also, did you ever have that fatigue start to creep in at times late in starts? And how do you counteract that as a very lower half-driven pitcher?
Honestly, competitiveness and adrenaline kind of powers you through the starts, and then you have your normal soreness. A lot of times it's lower half, and then obviously it's a violent motion pitching as a whole, so you have your general soreness later on, the day after, sometimes 2 days after, and going into that next week. But through that day, usually you're feeling pretty good, and it's kind of just like the balance of getting super locked in before the game or, being too laid back. So you kind of have to get to the right place. And then once game time comes, it's compete mode and you're locked in. And for me, especially in those longer starts, it's the first time through the order, first 2 times maybe through the order, you have the adrenaline, you're feeling your body out, you haven't thrown to hitters in a week. So throwing in front of fans with an umpire again, it's just getting that feel for competing. And then, you sit down in between your team's hitting and then you get back up and gets a little bit more comfortable. And then through that middle part of the game, particularly in that game, the 4th through the 6th, maybe, you got kind of getting cruise control. You're making pitches, you're not trying to make too perfect of pitches. You're not thinking, you're just in a flow. And that's kind of where all pitchers try to get. And then especially when a game's going like that, the 7th inning comes around, you're kind of smelling the end of the finish line. I think another adrenaline kick kind of comes in, and that's sort of when the body starts moving quick again and everything kind of ramps up to the next level.
How'd you feel after that one?
I was tired for sure. And the adrenaline, if I remember correctly, I couldn't eat for like 4 hours still after the game. I was all jacked up.
That's crazy. I feel like conventional thought would be like, oh, you must be starving, like big meal after the game. I know something else that you usually do is the cherry juice, right? Is that something that you still often do like after pitching for inflammation?
Yeah, that's something that the Vanderbilt nutritionists kind of had always for us. And then same with the Rangers. I think it's becoming more and more prevalent in just professional sports in general. That's in our weight room fridge. And it's just, I actually have one right next to me, the tart cherry juices. And, it's supposed to help with just sleep and overall muscle recovery. And my theory on that stuff is if it can't hurt and it might be able to help, I'm all for it. So, just whatever it might be, if it can help, I'm going to do it.
I think it's a great mentality. And what are some of the essentials for you? Like you talk about routine. I know you're somebody that's definitely very structured with the way you do things, and that's why you've been so successful to this point. What are some of the Jack Leiter essentials that you have to have in your routine to feel like you're on track to continue to be successful?
I mean, there's some warm-up exercises that I do. I have this whole, it's probably, especially on start day, I start my stuff, 2.5 hours before the game. And it kind of starts with a casual warm-up, mostly lower half, and not trying to, strain yourself, but sort of getting the body awake and ready for game day. Your mind's kind of there all day. I'm not somebody who's, kind of like the same person he is on his not start day that he is on his start day. I'm a guy who's locked in, and I don't really have too much casual conversation, especially leading up to game time on start day. And then as the start gets closer and closer, you kind of start to visualize what you want to do that day. I think visualization is huge, and the mental side, that's something that my dad's always preached. So I would say a lot of it's mental.
I was going to say that was going to be my next question. What are some of the things that your dad has really emphasized through the years that really still resonates with you on the mound today?
I mean, he always likes to ask pitchers what a pitcher's job is. He's not always the same. It's, get outs, go deep into games, win the game. But then my dad says, how do you get outs? And then, they'll say, you have to throw strikes. Well, you don't always have to throw strikes. He said, certain hitters, guys who didn't have as good plate discipline, he never threw strikes in the zone and they would chase it. So that's not really it. And he kind of worked it out when he got with Harvey Dorfman and kind of figured out the mental side when he was 28 years old. I think he figured out that in his mind, a pitcher's job is to be mentally and physically prepared to execute a quality pitch consecutively without letting distractions affect you until the manager takes the ball or the game's over. And that's been his mantra, word for word. And I've kind of just memorized it. And that's sort of what I've taken on as my own is, my job is just to make a good pitch. And then if I don't make a good pitch, now it's to make a good pitch. If I do make a good pitch, it's make another one.
I mean, and you can tell when you're on the mound, you have that focus, you're very locked in, and that short memory as well. You talk about a couple of sliders that you miss, and that ends up being a home run. The next pitch you're locked back in and you're focused. One of the last questions I wanted to ask you is just, you're somebody that's really had that meteoric rise to turning into one of the best high school prospects that had the opportunity to either go to pro ball or go to Vanderbilt. You make the decision to go to Vanderbilt. It works out even better, and you go number 2 overall to the Texas Rangers. How has that experience been for you, and how excited are you to be a Texas Ranger? Because I know that you really felt like you were wanted there. That was something you said to me, and I feel like that's the most important thing for a young player.
Yeah, I mean, what the Rangers are doing is really exciting, especially to be a part of the organization. But I mean, for the fan base and for Texas as a whole, it's pretty awesome. And you know, Chris Young, general manager, he did it. He was a pitcher in the big leagues, won a World Series, kind of knows what it takes, does know what it takes, and that's really cool because kind of every move, every decision that he makes, you know, as a player in the organization, it's hard not to just be like, you know, that's got to be the right thing. This guy knows what he's doing, and there's a lot of trust, and you can see it from the top down, and everyone wants to win. So, you know, being a part of this organization, you know, right before the good is a pretty cool thing, I would say.
And how awesome was it to see that stadium now? I know they gave you a little bit of a tour of it, get an idea of what you have to look forward to. I know you're going to climb the minor leagues quite quickly, but seeing that must have get you lit a little bit more of a fire under you. That's one of the top of my list to go check out that stadium. For those listening, Rangers fans maybe that haven't seen it, what do you have to say about the stadium to wrap up here?
The stadium's amazing. And, you know, you kind of walk in and at first it's like, this is like too nice to be a baseball stadium, basically. Like once you walk in and then the field is kind of below where you walk in and this in the from the outside, and it's so cool. You know, I haven't seen it with the open roof, but the closed roof is awesome. I can imagine it'd be the same when it's open. Hopefully, you know, some playoff games late in the season, that would be pretty awesome with the packed house.
Absolutely. Final question. What are you most excited for this season? And, you know, what would make it a successful year for you?
I would definitely say I'm most excited to get in a team environment again. Spring training's awesome, but it's kind of just one huge clubhouse and everyone's kind of just moving different ways. You know, you're in different working groups and you don't really have any like specific teammates, I would say. So getting out there, that's in my opinion the best part of the game is you know, the memories that you make with your teammates on and off the field. It's a pretty awesome game, and that's what I'm most excited for. And in terms of goals, I don't like to keep it long term. I like short term goals. So for me, it's just focusing on what I can do to, you know, succeed in my next start, whatever those goals might be. It's more, you know, short term goals, and then the long term kind of takes care of itself. So I would say it's pretty simple stuff.
Well, Jack Leiter, really excited to see you succeed this year, whether it's high A or double A. I know you'll be up in the upper minors very quickly, and I'm looking forward to going out to catch a start of yours this season. Can't wait to watch you throw in pro baseball, and thank you so much for taking the time, my man.
Thank you for having me.